what do you guys think about my new project, Inset for Tutors? Saw that pop up on WhatsApp just now?
Yeah, I
It's
was slightly confused about, you said it was included in the QT
Oh yes, it
membership.
is. Yeah.
So the
It's
so the
going to be
cost.
our new cadence of events. So I'm going to be running these Thursdays and a new Wednesday that you'll be invited to, which will be focused on parents and also live on social media. And the rest of our training will be delivered on these inset days. So you've got the full calendar for the inset days now. You can book those in so you know exactly what to expect for 25, 26. Okay, here we are, live on LinkedIn. It's Thursday morning, 11 a.m., which is QT Conversations. These go live to LinkedIn and then they go to YouTube and to Spotify. So this is our shared thinking, our opportunity to push the boat forward a bit. And this is a really interesting topic because we actually discussed this last year. Sometimes I really wait till the last minute to feel what's in the air in tutoring. And this was one of those. So earlier today in the WhatsApp group, in the QT WhatsApp group, which David, you've just landed in. So I hope you've got a sense of the excitement. We did have a new baby born this week in the QT membership, which is pretty awesome. Congratulations to the awesome Kaylee. But today in the WhatsApp group, people started talking about parents who show up for last minute expecting tutors to wave magic wands and get kids to pass exams. Hands up if you've met those parents before. hands up if you've been hands up if you've been that parent before. So what that means, actually, you know, or you all know quite well that I start much earlier. And that's really all you want to say, isn't it? If this conversation was 30 seconds long, the message would be, parents, please start earlier. Please realize what your young person is going to need earlier in the academic year. But there are situations when it dawns on parents last minute that their child is not prepared. And so they reach out to tutors. I'm going to ask each of you to just give me your overview of that scenario, where that's come up for you, how you feel about it. No swearing. Oh, good. Alexia's here. She's got a lot of thoughts on this subject. But Emma, we're starting with you.
Oh, thanks, Julia. So it was me that started the conversation. I'll hold my hands up. Um, I had an inquiry this week from a parent who wanted help for the exams that start in 2.5 weeks.
GCSEs,
GCSEs, um,
maths.
maths,
Okay.
basically 3 years worth of content in the exams. Child had been out of school for a long period of time, hasn't long been back in school, and had no information about grades they were currently working at, target grade, gaps in knowledge.
How did the parent find you?
Friend had recommended us.
And how did the parents seem when they spoke to you?
So I haven't spoken to them on the phone. It was a message. And the message was, have you got any availability? Need to start now. So
Alexia,
also the
you've
lack
got the
of
gist now,
politeness
yes?
also got my back up. Sorry?
Sorry, say that bit again. What got your
The,
back up?
the lack of politeness also got my back up.
Okay. Okay. So I think it's really, really worth speaking, like remembering that that's one of the things here. It's rude. It's rude coming in and asking a professional to do their work backwards. It's sort of Ginger Rogers, isn't it? Backwards and in high heels. It's like, set me up for success and I will give you everything that you need and you will have a wonderful experience and your young person will have a wonderful experience. Come to me 3 weeks in, everybody's being set up for failure.
I should also add that the next message was they're going to fail without a tutor. So the expectation is that the tutor is going to get them to pass.
Well, the tutor could get to them to pass, but next year.
Yeah. Or
Okay.
maybe even 2 years' time if that's what the child needs.
Oh, we're going to get to that as well. That's the thing. Okay. Dee, go for it.
This hasn't happened to me this year, but it did happen last year.
I mean, Dee, there's 2.5 weeks to go, so anything could happen.
I am, and there's no what, no, My- no. Um, and interestingly about this language about passing, because of course, if you get a number on a GCSE, you have a GCSE pass. And it's about this perception that unless you get what it is that other agencies want, like college, employers, which is a grade 4, then you have failed. But you haven't. If you get a number on a GCSE, you have a GCSE pass.
Well, that's interesting. It definitely, you're trying to redefine what the expectation is, but it doesn't really matter if it's called pass or fail. If the kid is the child is trying to get onto an apprenticeship or a BTEC or into a college, they need a 4. So it's not that they need a pass; it's that they need a 4, and the parent doesn't have the language for that.
There is a bar which they need to get over.
Okay.
There is a bar which they need to get over. Um, and managing expectations is a blooming minefield and something I was not very good at. And I don't think I'm that good at it still because I want to make the magic happen.
Yeah, I've been reading not a brilliant book. It's called The Rules of Everything. I thought if I left it lying around, my kids might read it. And one of the things it says in there in the professional section, it says under promise and over deliver, which is probably a really good strategy for managing expectations. Katie, shall we move on to you next, and then David?
Yes, I mean, I'm still working through agencies, so it doesn't really apply to me. I mean, I have actually had a friend actually contact me for last minute tuition for GCSE, which I did decline. Um, but I'm kind of very familiar with this situation because often the work that sort of gets handed to me through agencies is in this context. And I do feel that there could be more from the agency's perspective in terms of managing the client's expectations before they get passed on. Because I definitely the comments about rudeness in terms of communication with the client, that really resonated quite well with me. And also, yeah, and it almost you kind of feel a little bit like you're suffering because of other people's disorganization, which obviously doesn't allow you to do your job properly. And we've got to remember that we, as professionals, we want to be doing our job properly as well. Otherwise, we're not getting that job satisfaction that comes with, knowing that you're able to do that.
You've nailed it, Katie. That's really, really helpful. And I think what I'd really like to do is set aside the last 20 minutes of this session to empathize with the parents, because there's going to be a little bit of sort of, letting out steam. And then there's going to be what's sitting behind the rudeness, that's probably worth. And I think you nailed it with disorganization, and also a lack of insight. I just don't see my child as a learner. That's just not how that's not the relationship we have. And I also think that element about working with agencies, and that agencies should buffer, shouldn't they? They should create a buffer zone. And I know that Emma does this in her managing of tutors. When you take on a parent before you pass them to the tutor, there's a piece of work that needs to be done around how to get the best out of this investment. Right, David, let's go to you next.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting one because, in actual fact, I might be swimming against the tide a bit here, but I have taken on students at this stage when they have been kind of clear about a very specific fix, as it were, that they might want. So So if a student comes to me and says, look, I'm really struggling with, this particular mechanism for organic chemistry, whatever it may be, the nucleophilic substitution. Can you tell me about the nucleophilic substitution of primary haloalkanes or something, very, very, I've always struggled with this. Can you give me an hour on this?
Brilliant.
Then that to me is constructive use of the tutoring facility.
Emma agrees, nodding vociferously.
Yeah, great. If it is, I'm going to chuck a load of money at this child has been neglected, or we haven't paid much attention. All of a sudden, we've got some mock results. We're panicking. Then, and we're going to chuck a load of money at it. And we expect you tutors to jump and do what we want. Then, my hackles will rise, and I'll say thank you very much for the inquiry, but I don't think I can help, or I'm full. But I do think I wouldn't want to say there is a cutoff. Speaking as a parent, my own son 2 years ago was preparing for A-level. A-level didn't do chemistry. I hate chemistry, he said, but he was preparing for A-level mathematics. And a colleague of mine who I knew well, great mathematics tutor, Matthew, my son, said, Dad, I'm struggling with whatever it was, something that I didn't understand anyway, but something, some calculus or other. I said, I know just the guy who can help you. We'll set you up with 4 hours, over 4 weeks or whatever, to specifically address that problem. And it was great. And Matthew, I knew the guy. There was a relationship anyway, and that started, and away that went. So I was happy about that.
I think what you've described.
Again, I don't think there's a cut-off. I wouldn't have wanted a cut-off at that point. Bill to say no, can't do it. But it does vary. It has to vary, doesn't it?
Well, I think there's two things that you've said there that I think are that I'd love to follow up with. One is the metacognition. So
yeah. Hello, is she frozen?
I think so.
We've lost her.
Okay. Oh no. It's a nice shot though. At least it's not.
It's very positive.
No, I had a freeze the other day when it was a really, it wasn't just an awful image. Oh, she's back. Hello.
I'm back, but we lost Alexia, and I'm gutted because I was just about to call on her. She should have warned me. David, what I was trying to say before Wi-Fi dropped out, I'm now on hotspot. What I was trying to point out was that ability to identify which topics you don't know is a high level skill, isn't it? And that's a child who is probably already going to pass comfortably and is looking for a higher grade and needs specific topics. That's not an I need a grounding in this subject. And the other thing that you mentioned was the hackles. And I really want to talk about what was causing those hackles to go up. And of course, it's that same sort of bibbity bobbity boo, parents expecting tutors to wave a magic wand and pass exams, or magically fill in grounding that wasn't there.
But it's more than that, though. For me, in that I don't want the relationship. I do want the money, but I don't want the relationship to be money driven. I.e., if that parent says, "Oh well, look, money's no object. We can chuck 30 hours this week and 30 hours next week at it," I'm not bothered to take it, however much you want to offer me, because the whole thing about the tutoring is developing that relationship and getting to a point where it is properly trusting, and that they know, and you can't buy that. Yes, of course, there has to be a financial transaction. I have to earn a living, etc., etc. But I don't think that the idea that somebody coming in saying, "I've got the money, I'm ready to go, give me whatever hours," doesn't do it. because it's so much about the quality of the relationship rather than just, it's not a transactional thing necessarily. I mean, there is a transaction, but you know what I mean.
Absolutely, I know what you mean. And I agree that it all comes down to trust. I think it would be interesting to talk about what you can do in 2.5 weeks with
Yeah.
a student. What is the realistic expectation? Emma, can I call on you?
I think, like David said, you can look at specific topics, you can look at specific skills if they're aware enough. So the example I gave earlier, where they can't even tell you what grade they're currently working at and what target they're aiming for, you've got nothing to work with. So if they've got specific targets in terms of what they need to work on, then yes, of course, you can do a few hours here and there. You can build their confidence if it's a confidence issue.
Which is to say they do know the stuff, they just don't trust themselves.
Yes. However, if you've got a student that doesn't know what they're doing, you could actually do more damage in those 3 hours you spend with them because
What
you're
does that look
highlighting
like?
what they don't know.
Yes.
So I think it very much depends on how much they know
Yeah.
and what they do actually need to work on. If you're looking, for example, in maths, we do a lot of rag sheets, so red, amber, green sheets for each topic. If you're looking at it and a lot of it's amber, you can probably do a lot of work with them in 3 weeks. If you're looking at it and it's all red, you're probably going to do more damage than good.
If you were looking, I think that's such a helpful way to say it because it's so quantitative. It's, it's quite a, yeah,
Mathematical.
yes, mathematical. But also I'm wondering whether if you saw lots of reds, what are the low-hanging fruits in your subject that you could pick up?
Yes, there are things that you could do to fix little things, but I still think it's a very fine line that you're then potentially going, we're just going to pick those few things because you're not going to fix them all overnight, could have a detrimental effect on the way they're going into that exam.
And also you have this feeling at the back of your mind as well that it could have a detrimental effect on your reputation.
Yeah.
Yes.
From a business perspective, yes,
From a
absolutely.
business perspective, and also from a sort of professional integrity. I'm not sure should take on this student.
And from a slightly different perspective, as a business owner, I don't want to put my tutors in that position.
Mm.
I don't want them to have that feeling.
Mm. Now, you and I have discussed having really brave conversations with parents where you ask them to adjust their expectations. Can you just speak to that for a second, please?
So I am quite honest with my parents, and I will quite often say to them, I don't think your child's going to pass this time. But the framing is they're not ready to sit it now. Their journey isn't at this point. They are, not every child is made the same. They shouldn't all be sitting the exam at the same time. Your child is not ready at this point. They may be ready in November, they may be ready next summer. So can we adjust the plan slightly? And then we treat the real exam like another mock. They do it properly, they sit it. And then we use that mock to then boost them forward for November, and we just don't stop the tutoring. We just keep going as if they're not going to pass.
I can tell you as a mum, if you said to me, let's treat this exam as a mock and then just keep going towards the retakes, I would find that so reassuring. Because what happens as a parent is you believe the school and you believe that things must happen in a certain sequence in order for your child to live a happy life. And of course, that's not true, but it does take a wise expert to say, hold on, there are other ways to make this happen. And that's a highly trustworthy approach. Is there anything else you wanted to share? Because I wanted to go to Katie next. Go ahead.
Just that often I'm the first person to tell them their child is going to fail. which is really hard. It's hard for the parent to hear it, but it's hard for me to be that person. And sometimes it doesn't land well. I'm not going to pretend it lands well every time. But if it doesn't land well, they probably shouldn't be working with me anyway, because
True.
I'm all about honesty, integrity, not taking the money just for the sake of it, and so on. I'm going to take the money if I can have an impact. And we have to have that honest conversation, because otherwise I'm taking money for no reason.
Which goes right back to trust, doesn't it? That's exactly what David was saying, that if you can't have the relationship that you need to with this family, then you don't really want to start it at all. Katie, I was really intrigued by the friend who asked you to do some tutoring and you didn't take them on. You declined the work.
Yes, I mean, it was about a week ago. So I basically, wasn't comfortable taking on. And also, I feel that I wouldn't want anything to impact my current students as well. For me to start worrying and getting sort of stressed about it at this time. I think as has been discussed, I think if there's a student that is diligent, that has done the work, that needs a couple of topics, that knows the topics they need, I think that's one thing. And certainly there are students that would have the intelligence that can sort of almost cram quite close to exams and do really well. And I've worked with those types of students and known them, but it's just the risk that you're taking before you start working with the person. You really don't know what type of enough about them, and I just don't think, having done this for so many years, it's worth it, just in terms of stress and just the low likelihood of there being success. But just as well with regards to managing expectations we, with the agencies I work through, we tend to write monthly reports, and what I would say is, similar to what Emma was saying, I will always be quite clear in the report whether or not I think they're on target to pass exams, if that's what we're working towards. And I think I've really become like that because I think it's very important to sort of manage expectations and obviously cover your back, because often this communication cannot be you're not quite sure what communication's gone on by other parties involved, let's say. um, so I'm talking about the agency, and whether or not just to make sure that the client is aware, that the student is not on track to pass at this time. And I really like the idea as well, of if you do get a student late in the day, of the mock, treating the test like a mock test. And also, I think getting a student 2 weeks before an exam, I mean, even if you spend a little bit of time with them and they start to love the subject, they start to get into the subject, that can be really beneficial as well. And it might make them realize, oh, hey, I'm not going to be able to learn everything in 2 weeks, but I've seen how much progress I've made in these couple of sessions, and let's continue for a date further down the line, that's more manageable.
Yeah, especially if you can put that in this is what might happen early on in the conversation as a sort of contingency plan. We can start here and see how it goes, and if we don't take the exam at this time or pass the exam at this time, we can pass it in the future. I agree that that's really helpful. You've said something that we'd not discussed before, and that is the emotional implication on you and the knock-on effect for your students. Do you want to speak more about that? I know, Dee, that you've got a lot of insight on that subject, but Katie, is there anything else you wanted to bring in before I go to Dee?
No, I mean, no, just, I guess I get a little bit worried on my students' behalf as we're getting close to exam period. So it's kind of a stressful time for me.
Yeah.
And I guess you only have a certain amount of energy. And obviously, if you get a new student coming in that you haven't developed the relationship with, is it fair to start diverting some of your energy from your students that you've been working with for two years? I think that's kind of where I'm coming from with that.
So much integrity in that question. I really, really appreciate it. Dee, what would you say in terms of the effect of taking on the wrong student?
I echo very much what Katie has just said. I have a finite number of spoons, as Jenna likes to put it. And at this stage, my priority is going to be those students that I have been working with and have established a relationship with. And if I take on, I got hugely stressed this time last year. In fact, I think I had about 6 weeks to go, so it wasn't quite as bad, but I was still not in a good place as a result of taking them on. And the qualified tutor community were amazing in supporting me and guiding me as I navigated that. But it isn't fair on the students I've been working with for all that time if what I'm doing for them is being compromised by me trying to work magic with a student. And also with this, if I take on a student last minute, I have had this, is taking them from that unconsciously incompetent stage to the consciously incompetent
Emma,
stage
this is exactly what you were
is
just saying. Yeah.
is horrible for them,
It's really
and
mean.
it's awful for me for this, the light bulbs are coming on for all the wrong
You're
reasons.
waking them up.
And it's awful. It's, the student I had this time last year, um, she she got a grade 3 in the end,
Yeah,
but she was actually retaking. She was coming to the end of a 2-year college course,
I remember
but her
her.
work
Yeah.
placement, she'd actually already got work. So she didn't have to get the grade 4 because she got the job, that they were all happy with her, and that was all lovely. But it was the feedback I got from the mum about the impact it had had on her as a human being, and the change in her confidence and the way that she was relating in the workplace as a result of the work that I'd done with her. And it's that aspect of my work that can bring me as much joy as actually seeing the light bulbs come on for the right reasons in terms of their academic development.
I love all of that. And there's something that you just touched on there. And I think the word is shame. Going through life without a pass, whatever that means, in maths is a shame. It's a little deficit that sits on their shoulder and makes a person feel like doors are shut to them. I have a friend who is the most wonderful early years practitioner, but because she didn't have a maths GCSE, she could never take a management role. And her husband is a fantastic maths tutor, and he got her through it on her third try. And that for her, and she walked taller after she passed it. Go ahead, Dee. What are you saying?
I'm tutoring a year 11 who's came to me in January, I think, so of year 11. So, later than I would like, but I've worked with his dad, and when I first started tutoring, I worked with his mum, who was working in a school and needed her grade 4 to be a TA.
You tutored his mom. Isn't that gorgeous?
But
Isn't
but
that
he's
brilliant?
but he's
So,
he's
do you
put
think
he's
you might have broken the generational cycle of maths anxiety there?
who knows?
Who
Who
knows?
knows? Who knows?
You'll know in
The
10
biggest,
years.
I mean, my biggest headache at this time of year is working with GCSE brackets, mostly boys, close brackets, and finding ways to help them motivate themselves.
Right. So that's the only thing that we haven't spoken about. We spoke about knowing the subject, and we spoke about building confidence. We haven't actually spoken about revision skills or executive functioning. Is that because we feel that 2.5 weeks in, it's too late to talk about those things? Emma's just popped back up with an answer for that one. But
If
David, I
if
did promise that I was coming to you next. So can we speak, David, a little bit about how to tackle the exams. Is that something that you can help a young person with in the next 2.5 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I'm tempted to give a guarded answer here in the sense that it so much depends upon the student, of course. But I think you can. I mean, in sort of relatively simple ways. You know, this is the paper, or this is an example of the paper you might face. This is what it looks like. You've got to put your name there. You know, those sorts of things without which, in fact, disaster ensues anyway. With some of the exams that I will be preparing students for, there's a multiple choice section quite often. And a multiple choice, you know, the way you tackle a multiple choice type of questions can make a big difference.
Right.
So, you know, I guess we call that exam technique, but
Katie, that's in your subject also, is it?
With the multiple choice, yeah. Yeah, I'm agreeing.
Can you make an actual change in a grade by teaching the student to manage multiple choice better?
I would have thought so, because a grade boundary is only 1 mark, isn't it? So the cheeky answer is yes, you can, because with multiple choice, you know, the problem that a lot of students have is that they will spend a very long time on a multiple choice, longer than the 1 mark that may be available. And so one of the things that I would be teaching, certainly at A level, would be that, you know, don't spend, if there's four options and there's a calculation associated with each of them, don't do all calculations necessarily, because that'll take you a long time. What you've got to try to do, and this is, you know, it's a bit of a bugbear of mine, of course, is estimate and then get closer to the answer that way. Now, students grab their calculators, of course, but, you know, willy-nilly. So part of what I'm saying is actually try to get a sense of the number. But you know, I'm getting ahead of myself. But I think
that was really granular and informative. Thank you. That's really helpful.
Thank you. But I do think there are, they're not tricks. There are things that you can do that will speed you up. You know, and the simple one, of course, everybody says, you know, make sure you answer every multiple choice. There's no penalty for putting the wrong answer in, assuming there isn't. I mean, assuming we know that. But yeah, so there are things that I think you could do that address and that could make a difference. But you know, as you know, whether you're going to make the difference, I don't really know. I can't say that. But you know, it depends. Some students pitch up and don't even know how many papers they're facing, don't know what the expectations are in terms of, you know, how long, what they've got to take. I mean, it's seldom at A level, to be fair, but there are things like that I would go for, quite practical.
So that's really relevant as well, isn't it? That I think most of these calls happen at GCSE level. Most of these last minute freak out come at GCSE level, because in A level, when you become more specialist in your subject, you can't get that close to the exam without and not realize that you are far from passing. Is that very carefully said? Now, Emma, you turned your screen back on, which means you had something to say about, can you help them with exam technique or revision technique?
It was just bad timing of turning my camera back on. But yeah, I think you can help them with exam technique. I think there are things you can do. And I think there are things that will make a difference in terms of the marks. But it goes back to if they've got the knowledge.
Yeah.
Because you can teach them to break down a question, do one line, do some maths, all that lovely stuff that does make a difference. But if they haven't got the skills in the first place, the impact is limited.
Yeah. Okay, so I said that we were going to ring fence the last 20 minutes to talk about the emotional implications here, because we know about trust and we know about professionalism, and we also know about compassion. So there are parents and young people who are struggling and they reach out to us, and that's a responsibility and it's a privilege. And some of them are not gentle in the way that they communicate. And that's coming from a place, isn't it? And it's not coming from us because they've never met us. Katie, would you, and I know that you've got this additional layer of agency communication, but let's just see if we can sort of unpick and articulate what the what's going on behind the panic.
Well, I think it's
with all the stakeholders, actually, with you as well.
Yes, I mean, the last call I had was he's not even taking his GCSEs, but he started the IGCSE course, and he had the end of year 9 examinations, and I was only doing, like a couple of ad hoc lessons over Easter, but I ended up spending probably about an hour on the phone before each one of these 3 lessons with his mother. And in the end, I kind of got invested, and I thought, you know what, even though I really should be charging for this, it's fine. We had it, but from her, so I really did sort of get to understand it from her perspective. And I think from her perspective, he'd done very well in these common entrance exams. So she thought he was going to be fine. And I think it was just managing that understanding about the leap from the 13 plus examinations to the IGCSE course, which is quite advanced. And just the fact that it doesn't matter how bright he is, because obviously she kept talking about that. If he doesn't learn the technical vocabulary and find a way to make it meaningful to him so that he will learn it, unless he's got a photographic memory, it's just not going to happen. So we discussed all of that, and eventually, it all came round. But I very much got the impression, this is a last minute thing. I think he was doing lots of sports and other activities, and it just got lost in chaotic family life.
I think that's lovely as well to think about the assumption that the mum made, because he did well the last time there was a summative assessment, he'll do well this time. And we've sort of already got that inkling of, okay, but his executive functioning skills didn't grow with him. Yeah. So, all of that helping that was given to an 11-year-old has not traveled through and appeared for this 16-year-old. And therefore there's this gap in what he's been able to do and grow. And we know that schools do not teach the organizational skills that the young person, all of our progress is spiky and lumpy, and that bit hasn't kept up with him. It's not enough to say he did well then, so he'll do well now. It's good to say he's got a track record, but sometimes that track record, especially when it's not the priority, sports and extracurriculars, if it's not the priority, then and it just dropped off the plate. And of course, chaos as well. I'm curious to know, because that mum who she quite cleverly got you invested, didn't she? And she actually got she got a 50% discount on her time with you. So I'm wondering what resonated in the way that she reached out to you. She must have been quite vulnerable, because if she was rude or scatty or anxious, you wouldn't have been on a phone with her for another hour.
No, she was very polite. I mean, she was actually very polite, which it's sad to say, but that is often in the minority of people that I deal with. And it was, it was just she was taking what I was saying on board. It took a while, but we discussed lots of different strategies, and it was also good for me as well. I think I went into it thinking it's good for me to know what's going on the other side, particularly with these very ad hoc lessons where you come in, you don't know the student. I'd actually prefer, in a way, to kind of know a bit more about what I'm going to be working with, so that I can get more out of the lesson. Because at the end of the day, if you're not feeling like you're making a difference, it really isn't worth it. I've got to that stage of my life now.
And I'd love to know whether those insights that you had with that family have been transferable. So that additional time that you took, has that turned into CPD for you? Has it built
Definitely,
your experience?
Yeah. Definitely, yes, because I think it definitely made me think more about just making sure the examination technique, I guess. So providing students with different strategies each lesson, and sort of getting them to sort of play and have a go at different ones and find which one that works for them, because ultimately learning is very emotive, isn't it? So you've really got to, you may learn through writing out flowcharts, you may prefer mind maps, but it's really about, them sort of taking ownership of their revision and finding it with a bit of guidance and finding, the way that works best for them.
Yeah, fantastic. And sometimes you do need to spell out those strategies, and you need to make a partner of the parent. And probably, wait, did the young person, did he pass?
Well, he took some school exams after a couple of lessons and he didn't do very well. And we've done some more intensive um, sessions over the last couple of weeks. And then he's not doing GCSEs, he's sort of in year 10. So he's got his end of year 10 exams um, coming up. So it's not, it's not a massive stress,
She
which I think
panicked early
is
enough.
good. Yes, yes.
Very good. That's really helpful. David, coming to you now. I've been seeing that you've been writing notes, so I just need to know what's, and if they're doodles, we want to see them. No, you're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
No, I mean the it's an interesting thing. The managing of expectations, the early interaction with student and parent seems to me critical here. And I'm always keen to meet with parents and potential tutee before I take them on, and in order that we're clear about, I don't know, I'm always interested in what dynamic there is between student and parent. And I recognize what Katie said about a tuition agency, or when it's a third party, somebody has set you up, right, be here, be there that time. I find that a difficult situation to walk into as a tutor. I really want to be able to look the student in the eye, or virtually or otherwise, but to see their level of engagement and see whether in fact we can establish, well, eye contact for one, but we can establish trust between us. And I think I find that, perhaps the most important thing that we should do in setting ourselves up is to have some kind of vehicle whereby you are saying, let's establish what it is we're trying to achieve. And that to some extent, that is why I find the agency things more problematic, shall we say, because I've had one or two occasions where an agency has said, 3 lessons, chemistry A level. You go, right, great, who are they, where are, and you're just sort of dumped in there. When it's my own inquiries that come in, I always insist on a half hour free of charge, which is, let's chat and
Absolutely
let's work
right.
out, where we are.
Well, because otherwise you waste the first of those 3 hours doing that.
Exactly, yes. But also, I do feel then that it's also the parent needs to be engaged, because there's time you talk about rudeness or offhandedness or whatever, or the just chucking money at. Actually, come on, parent. You've got a big involvement in this. We want you there. Now, mate, 98% of parents that I've met have been absolutely fantastic, but there is the occasional one who's been there, couldn't care less, just, oh yeah, well, let me know or send me the bill, and they're off. And you go, well, this isn't a way to go. I don't like another factor in terms of the sort of management of it is the dialogue, ongoing dialogue. I use Tutor Cruncher a lot, and I find that Tutor Cruncher kind of makes me write a report, which is good for me because I forget stuff if I don't write it down. So it's great because then I've got a record of what we've done. But through that, I am also trying all the time to manage expectations.
Well, let me share with you what I do with the tutors, qualified tutor members who work with my kids, because it works really well.
Yeah.
I've created WhatsApp groups for each of those relationships, and I'm the silent partner. So they communicate, they schedule. The tutor always does a voice note feedback at the end of every session. I listen to it on double speed, but it's good for both of them because everybody feels supported.
Yeah.
for me, the phrase is, and I've actually run sessions for parents on this in the past, is pay attention. We know you're paying money, sometimes a lot of money, a painful amount of money, but are you paying the attention that it needs? And it doesn't need a lot. I really don't want to read a Tutor Cruncher report. I don't want to read any report, but I just want to know that everybody knows what they're doing. And I'm also never going to learn what surds are. But if you do the talking in front of me, then I'll know that it's happening. And that's all my job as a parent is just to know that the thinking's moving forward.
Yeah.
Right, Dee, I pinged you in the chat and I asked you to speak about compassion. I really want to hear about that moment of, on the one hand, please speak to us politely, realize that we're not fairy godmothers waving, or fathers made waving magic wands, and yet we are here to help.
Yeah, and it all comes down to trust. And it depends on how they found you. I mean, the student I was dealing with this time last year, I'd actually tutored the girl's boyfriend, and it was the boyfriend who'd recommended me when it was apparent that she was really struggling with her second resit at the GCSE. And a couple of things I wanted to pick up on. I work with a tutoring business as well, and there's been a very small number of occasions when I've started working with a student, and I don't like that, as David described, that discovery situation that you can have if they've come to you direct. And after a few sessions in, I've decided, you know what? I can't do my best with this student because they're not speaking to my values, my whys, my strengths, if you
Was this
like.
the one who was rude?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, she wasn't rude. She just didn't know how to say thank you.
That's rude.
Well, yeah. And it was I just felt ongoing low level discomfort to the point where I thought, you know what? I don't need this.
And
I
it's
don't.
leaking your energy, isn't it? And, you know, the way Katie said that it has an impact on
Yeah,
other students.
yeah, yeah. And I do invest in helping the parents navigate communicating with the school, because that's often where this. I mean, the thing that came up in the WhatsApp about this parent coming up, been out of school for however long, been back in school, don't know what grade they're working at, what their target grade is, and I'm thinking, well, where's the breakdown in communication here, and how can I help put that right as
It
well? Which,
occurs to me, you know, the visual that you've just plopped in my brain there is that when children stay on the school track, it's like they're traveling a motorway. And as long as they stay on the track, they'll get wherever it is, you know. Of course, the motorway is also really high risk because you're driving faster and there are crashes. Now, young people who come off the track, emotional based school, absence, not attending school for whatever reason, they start to go off piste, don't they? And that off piste has more obstacles to it. And it actually takes more energy and more skill to navigate. And then your role as the tutor becomes that person, because I'm just thinking personally, you know, how much energy it takes to advocate for your young people once they drop off the track is really, really difficult. It's really difficult. We're going to run out of time, and I really want to hear from Emma. Emma, just talk to us, and you've only got 90 seconds, I'm afraid, about there's other ways to get your child where they need to get to, and the don't panic.
You've just summed it up. There are many paths, like it doesn't have to be right now. And if you're panicking 2 weeks before the exam, then maybe it's time to reassess what the goal is or where the goalpost is. And maybe we need to move it slightly.
Lovely. And the thing I think that's sitting there is that it's a reactive situation, isn't it? Calling just before exams for tutoring input. Whereas really what we want to be is responsive. Take a long-term view, see where your child actually wants to be, and help them to get there in 6 months or 18 months or 6.5 years, or, you know, before they turn 60. But really, life is long. And the problem with summative assessments is they are too high stakes. They do not bring the best out of the child, out of the parents, which is why they're being rude, and sometimes even out of the tutors. And that's why our hackles get up. We want to do our best work. We show up with professional integrity every single day. We don't want to take on too many students. We don't want to take on students that are going to work to the detriment of other students. We can't give them more than our well-being can cope with. We can't wave magic wands. We can't turn back time. We can build in quick wins. So if it's multiple choice or if it's specific topics, then we can help them to tackle those specific things. But the idea is that, yes, we are here to help. Yes, we are here to help. We will help your young person, but not necessarily in 2.5 weeks. So you may have to change your expectations.
And not necessarily in the way the parents has envisaged.
Yeah. And if you are trustworthy enough to help them to reframe, what a gorgeous partnership you can create. So I bless you all that your GCSE and A-level students should do really, really well in the next few months, and you should get all the good feeling and satisfaction of that. And if they don't, that's fine too. Have a lovely, lovely, lovely weekend. Thank you, Dee. Thank you, Dave.